Hey everyone, welcome to this great episode of the GC360 podcast. I'm your host, Erica Becker, and on this show we have some of the most interesting conversations with people in the community. And today I am very much looking forward to talking more. I've been talking off air with her, but I have on the show today my friend Susan Gatti. She is a business consultant. And Susan, we've been talking so much. I want to reiterate some of the things we've already been saying.
Please, jump right in.
But first,
because I care more about what you find interesting than what I find interesting. So go right ahead.
But first, tell the listeners who may not know a little bit about what you do, the group that you run, and everything.
Awesome. So just to say a quick hello. First of all, I love to tell everybody I actually don't even know who I am some days, and that has really been a hard lesson for me to learn. Because growing up, I always believed I needed to be one thing. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be a school teacher, and I was. Years ago now, almost 30 years ago, which is even crazy to say out loud. I know, right? I started as a school teacher, and I think the best gift I ever gave myself was the ability to be more than one thing. So I have been, the head of corporate universities. I ran Ann Taylor University. I've been a real estate agent. I've owned an instructional design company, and my latest leap is really combining all of these passions into one. In my work life, I work with, growing businesses as a business consultant. But what I'm really interested in doing is just helping more people to live joy in their life by understanding all of the energies of success.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm here to talk about today.
Yes, that's so great. And I'm a very big energy person, so now
this is why we've been vibing, because I don't have to explain it. It already makes sense to you.
It does.
It's really hard to bring these concepts into places where people aren't receptive to them. So thank you for making it so easy.
Of course.
To have this good conversation.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things I think is making yourself receptive to it.
Yep.
Because like you said, anyone can be in tune with all this if you want to be. You just have to open yourself up to it.
Everything is available to everyone. That is, like, I think, just such a beautiful message to remind yourself of. And for any of you that have children, spouses, if you serve, a lot of your listeners are on charitable boards and volunteer in school. Like, you don't have to be one thing in order to receive. It's a basic human right. A basic human fundamental right is to be open and willing to receive. Yeah. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that happen that close us off from that, which I hope we're going to talk about biohacking today.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about if you're not open to receive, or if receiving is harder for you, if this is the first time you're hearing about alternate ways that people find success outside of the most typical way, which is intellectual. We're just going to let that cat right out of the bag, right? There's four energies that make up success. The one we rely on most in our daily lives is intellectual knowledge, right? If I know it and it's true and it's been proven to me and I feel comfortable and confident, I can do anything I want. How often does that really happen for us?
Not often.
Not often.
Yeah, and like you said before too, even if you know it, like, so many things are out of our control.
Correct. Yes.
So many factors play into life.
Yep.
So what are the other pillars?
So under the energy of success, like I said, the first level we always go to, and this is really funny because in all the things that I've done, education has always been a predominant thing.
Yeah.
So I have created training for corporations, companies, children, you name it. And I even owned an instructional design company. So for 10 years, I was a top placed consultant creating training programs. And I had like my moment when I learned about these alternate energies that have nothing to do with what we know. And all of a sudden, like, the light came on and I was like, oh, well, this is why people think training doesn't work. I'm like, we're missing out on it. So what are the other energies? The first energy we always think about is knowledge. So what do I need to know? But in order to be successful, right, you have to believe that it's possible for you to do. So can you think of a time for yourself where maybe that got in the way for you?
Oh, for sure. I used to, when I was very young in school, I would be afraid to go to, I would get anxiety about going to school because I would think, I don't know enough. I don't know this for this test, or I can't remember these math equations, and I had trouble. And they made it obvious. They always made everything a competition, who gets the best grade, who gets that. And so I would think, oh, if I'm not as good as them,
I'm not going to be on the honor roll, right?
And then how am I going to be successful in life? You know, it's like you go the domino effect. So when I was young, it definitely held me back from, I probably could have done a lot better if I wouldn't have been so scared, you know?
Which is such a natural human reaction, right? And I think anyone watching, I'm sure there's something immediately that comes to your mind where you would have done it, but like something stopped you, right? That's kind of what we're talking about all the time. Like that's where these other energies come, and that's a real spiritual energy. Like how comfortable are you when things are unknown is actually quite a spiritual energy. It's the energy of growth mindset. Sometimes that makes sense to people that way. There's also a way to describe it in a sense of abundance versus lack, right? And a lot of times those play out over and over for us, right? So that's a huge energy that we don't tap into to its fullest potential, and B is often one of the areas that keeps somebody from taking an action even though they've learned something. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
So the spiritual energy is a great one to keep in mind. And the other one that I want people to really be aware of is their physiological response. And that's really where I want to spend our time with today. Because the physiological response is really the one that you can have the biggest impact with the quickest, and can literally open up lanes for you to do things you've never done before. So my goal would be that people, you personally, any of the people, there's so many people in the space with us, and anyone that happens to be watching this at any time, can you start to make shifts for yourself in the moment that just open up a different lane for you that you wouldn't have done before? And paying attention and getting in tune with our physiological response to stimulus is the easiest possible way to do that. So
awesome.
Let's spend some time with that one, because that's going to trigger emotions, which is actually the fourth energy. So this physiological and the emotional energy really go hand in hand. But I had to get the spiritual out there because everything is ultimately connected to that.
I definitely feel that. So let's do a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to get right into those
Let's do some
tips.
biohacking.
Yes, I'm excited.
Okay,
All
awesome.
right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after these messages.
My father never stops moving, but after he had a brain aneurysm, he had a difficult time getting back to his normal routine. That's when I called Alliance Services. They paired him with Rosa. She developed a custom home care plan that helped him with his recovery.
Rosa helped me gain my independence back.
Alliance Services, helping older adults continue to live well and independent.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the GC360 podcast. For those of you just tuning in, I am here with Susan Gatti, and we are talking about, we were just starting to get into talking about biohacking. So how, you said that the easiest way is the physiological, figuring out your physiological response. So where do we begin with that? I'm sure many of our viewers would love to know and probably have not heard a lot about this.
Awesome. So the first thing I want everybody to be aware of is your physiological response is not really anything you can actually do anything about. What you can just get really good at is understanding it, reading it, and using it to your advantage. That's what we like people to really think about. And I want to just tell a quick story that I think will really resonate and kind of put this into context. So when you think about the best of football players, right? We just finished football season. We're huge football people in my house. I actually met my husband playing football. That is totally a story for another day. We are rabid football people, and we love it. So we follow a lot of sports. And there's a company out there called Whoop, definitely worth looking up, who has a performance type watch, and they're really into, like, they geek out on data. So I love people that like geek out on data, because I use data every day in my life. And so they did a partnership with the winning quarterback of this year's Super Bowl. I know, crazy, right? And it was last season, so you can find all this data now, but what they actually did was put heart monitors on him, like their Holter. So he is in the huddle, right? And he is the quarterback. So he's watching everyone on the field. He's got seconds to make decisions. There's literally gigantic men, like with the sole purpose of knocking him to the ground. And I just want to ask you, what would your reaction to that be? Like, what would happen for you physiologically? What can you guess? What might happen?
I mean, for me, I feel like, my heart would race.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right?
You're like, what is going to happen?
What's going to happen? So here's the thing about Steve. His doesn't. Or Patrick, I'm sorry, I'm getting my quarterbacks confused. Patrick Mahomes, his heart rate doesn't. Do you know what his heart rate actually does?
Does it slow down?
It slows down.
What?
It slows down.
How's that?
You tell me, was he born that way? I believe at that level, it's within you already. And have you finessed it? Yes. So I think the rest of us regular people, right, who are hijacked all the time by that response to fear, right? Which is, our bodies are hardwired to do that. It's actually a very natural fight or flight, right? It's a very natural reaction. And there's a whole lot of chemical things that actually take place that make it really hard for you to focus, or make it really hard for you to make a decision, or flood your mind with lots of thoughts around anxiety. Or for some of us, and I fall into this camp, depending on the level of that perceived threat, I literally freeze. And I like to equate it to this, because this was just in the news, so it might be fresh in everyone's mind, but the iguanas have a certain core body temperature that they need to maintain. And in Florida, that's why they live in Florida, by the way, because it's not supposed to get lower than that temperature for them, because do you actually know what happens to them?
No, I don't.
The second it hits, they stop. They're
like frozen?
They're frozen. You'll Google it, YouTube it. There was clips all over. They literally, like, wherever they are, they just drop. They fall from trees. Like, my aunt sent a great article. She's a golfer. She's down, in Florida doing that thing. And they literally had like a video. Someone caught it on video. They sit in trees. They fall right to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
So think about yourself on this continuum, right? What happens for you in a very stress-inducing situation? Do you freeze? Do you slow down? Right? Do you ever go to change lanes and stop? Do you ever, you're like, and then you had like a split second later, you're like, I could have done it. Right? That's just your physiological response to a perceived threat. Ooh, was I going to get hit by the car? Right? And there's actually not a lot you can do about it. It's just how you're built.
Right.
So the one thing that I think is so important for people to understand is I often think we feel bad about ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
So why does Patrick Mahomes get to be the best quarterback in the world and I'm not? Honestly, he probably has some sort of physiological makeup that was going to stand him apart no matter what. It's true of hockey players. A lot of times they actually have a different way that their eye works, that they can actually stop. Baseball players, anybody that has to hit a really fast moving object, something moving 100 miles an hour, your average person, we can't even see it.
Yeah.
So we would never be able to hit that, right? So I think what I would love for everyone to know is that you don't have to feel bad for your actions. I also think it's a huge part of the mental health crisis, because some of us are wired that our anxiety produces things that take us completely out of control, right? And we need to get specialized support or help.
Definitely.
And we think there's something wrong with us. It's not. It's just how you're built.
Yeah, and it's just, okay, you have these things about you, these characteristics that are maybe not the same as what a majority of people, but then how do you just make it work for you?
Right. That's it. And awareness is really the first key to that. So generally all of these things are happening in the moment completely unconsciously. So it's a program. It's just on. You don't think about breathing, you just breathe. Right? You don't think about anymore. I think this is a common example. People use it a lot, but could you drive home and sometimes get home and be like, I'm not even sure how I got here.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
It's just because whatever is practiced enough in an auto replay is just what's available to you in the moment. So we were having some fun conversation about where can you feel it in your body. So we can use us as an example since we're here. like if you were going to want to make a quick change, right? Where might you feel like if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you have to swerve out of the way? What would might be a reaction for you?
If I'm thinking about that, for me, I feel that actually. I feel that in my chest.
You would feel it in your chest,
Yes.
right? And
my heart will.
Your heart will start
And
to
then,
beat faster.
I get, if something like that happens quickly, or even if it's not even something like that, if it's a conversation I'm having and someone says something and maybe I get upset, I get like a flush.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. So yes, a lot of
I
people.
can't even hide it.
You
So
can't
people
hide
know
this-
when I'm mad.
Yes, which is good and bad,
Yeah.
right? Which is good and bad. Yeah, so like there's just things that happen. I feel it here. Maybe I get a flush in my skin. For me, I definitely freeze. My daughter is
Okay.
the same way. So if she's like in a stressful situation in a basketball game, she'll literally like stop to the point where her coach will literally yell, "Alexandra, move." Like she will actually need a prompt to start moving
Okay.
again. So it's very interesting. And all of these things, again, like are happening all the time. Now, here's how it starts. So the first thing is just, can you feel it? And a lot of times, this was true for me when I first started. I was like, I don't feel anything.
Interesting.
And there's a reason for that too.
What's that reason?
Some of us, myself included, are in such a hyper state of worry all the time. We actually don't know what it feels like to not be in a constant state of reaction.
I think a lot of Americans are like that.
I think it's very prominent in, I think we see in a lot of other cultures, there's more, what's the word I want to use? There's more tolerance, there's more acceptance, and there's more, let's just use those words, for taking things slow or slower.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily value that in
don't
our
think-
American culture.
Yeah.
So because of that, we're constantly, right, in this sort of hyper active state.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and how do you start feeling that? You did the perfect thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're home and you're like playing with this, how often do you catch your shoulders up in the air? That's a really good thing to look for.
A lot of people.
A lot of people, myself included.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Shoulders up all the time. If you often feel a lot of reflux, is a great
Interesting.
way to kind of be curious about, am I setting off a
Interesting.
constant state of chemical reaction? We see a lot of, irritable bowel, different bowel issues, things with your stomach are often physical, right? It's
Yeah.
physically happening. We need things for them, but they are activated a lot of times by constant and persistent anxiety
Yeah.
states. So if you're struggling, if you're saying like, I'm not even like really able to see these things, it's just because you're living in that constant state all the time, and you're actually not giving your body a chance to feel something else.
Oh, wow. So how did you said that you personally were feeling this way. So how did you start to be able to connect?
Yeah, such a great question, because I would be perfectly honest and tell you, I think I spent my whole life that way.
Wow.
With my shoulders up. And sometimes I look around church is the best way to find it, right? Are you constantly in a closed position?
Yeah.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about, a lot of us have grown up with body language being your signal to the outside world. I actually think of it as your signal of your inside self.
Yeah.
So as I have gotten, I would have always told you my back was not very strong. My legs were very strong. I always felt really solid in the gym working out on my legs, but I always felt like my upper body was not as well developed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started finding more relaxed states, being not so guarded, learning how to trust, be curious, things that allowed me to rest a little bit, that my shoulders actually started going back on their own.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes moms, I'm going to just say this for you, dads, anyone with young girls, if you find yourself saying to your daughter, even your son, all the time, stand up straight, I invite you to think about, are they carrying a tremendous amount of stress, a burden to within themselves, because that is a very natural reaction
Absolutely.
to hunch yourself forward.
Absolutely. it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because when I was in school, like I mentioned, I had a lot of anxiety in school, and my mom, I was always had my shoulders
Like
up. And
this.
she would always be like, and she put me in dance class, which then got me into theater, which is a whole nother story too. But she put me in dance class so that
to get,
because in ballet, you know, they're training you.
And think about, let's
And
talk
it
about
helped.
all the energies of success. You were actually, dance is a phenomenal way to develop your core.
Yeah.
Where is your center of where is your strength?
Yep.
Where is your center of gravity?
Yep.
How can you be nimble and quick and have really good control over your body? All of that happens from our core. We were talking about this earlier. We often try and use our intellectual smarts to muscle through situations.
Right.
But it's actually when you come way lower in your body that you can tap into more of that holistic space around chakras and knowing and certainty that gives you fuel and energy to take action even though it's scary.
Yeah.
So back to your question, like, how did I get into all this? Because
Yes.
listen, I'm an intellectual junkie.
Okay.
I'm an information junkie. I create training for a living for, you know, businesses that are all numbers based. And so like talking about emotion and like, you know, it wasn't really an avenue for me in my work or really for myself. It also wasn't hugely safe for a lot of reasons,
Okay.
which is a whole other story. But I wanted to grow my business and I needed to be more visible in the world in order to do that. And that was extremely anxiety producing for me. And it was my pursuit in understanding why was I having such a hard time, because I knew everything. I knew my business and I had ridiculous proof that I was good at it. I could tell stories. But when it came time to like sharing that in larger circles, I would collapse on myself. I would collapse on myself and I couldn't actually get those things out. And so I started seeking alternative ways to get at more strength and more power to help me achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve, which was amazing because here I am. I would have never been here, but it did bring up a whole other host of issues for me, with conversation for another day, because all of a sudden I realized in my training, like teaching people information I wasn't actually giving people what they really needed.
Okay.
You know, and I think this is true in our schools. This is true in our corporate education. You know, every company in some way, shape, or form is educating their clients, and we think that if I just tell them everything they need to know, that'll be what they need.
And that's it.
But it's
of course not.
It's not.
No.
Right? Because if I'm going to use a new product, I mean, let's talk about this from a business standpoint. I'm an end user. I buy your software. I open it up, I install it on my computer, maybe, right? Because if I'm not technically savvy and I have this little story, I call this our bullshittery, by the way. This is the other thing I want you to do. You can hack your bullshittery all the time. I'm not good at technology. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at, right? Start listening for this. You'll hear it in yourself. You hear it in your kids. You hear it in your team members. I'm not good at. Whatever that loop is how you will act accordingly.
Okay.
So if I bought a software that I want, and now I have to install it on my computer, and I run into any frustration at all with that, you know what I'm going to do? That doesn't work. And all of a sudden, this amazing product that you have is no longer useful to someone. And the likelihood of them going back to that product is, it's just not possible. So you got to build bridges for people to get past these things. That's why I think that, you know, this biohacking and understanding your physiological response, because we're not, like, if you, let's just use this software, right? Am I really under attack physically?
Yeah.
Not really.
No.
But emotionally, I am. So
You can't,
anything that triggers shame, guilt, that bumps up against one of these bullshittery stories that we've created ourselves from our childhood will automatically produce a low energy frequency.
Okay.
So believe it or not, and this is why I have this book here.
I was going to say,
this is not my research. But I use really exciting tools and things like that. But this is actually an amazing book, totally worth taking a look at, called The Map of Consciousness. And it's by a scientist, and he actually quantified the energy of emotion.
Wow.
And I'll just share with you, because we were talking about this. So despair, blame, guilt, shame, grief. We were having a conversation about grief earlier. All of those are very low frequency energy sources, which means you do not have a lot of energy to take action. Whereas if you all of a sudden go from feeling shame I won't even talk about. If I open up your product and I can't use it, and that trips shame for me, right? That's my default reaction. I will put it in the box. I will box it up. I will never use it again. And so I'm no longer like your best customer, right? So all those other things. But the energy that is a little bit more associated with embarrassment, right, is a higher energy level. So I am probably a little bit more likely to say, well, this is kind of embarrassing, but I don't know how to do this, right?
Yeah.
But the energy of curiosity, let me just tell you this, the energy of curiosity and courage is up at a level of 200. And that's where there's actually very little resistance. So if you were to ask me, how do we use this in biohacking? Let's finish the loop, right? So something happens and I get triggered and it feels shameful to me, or I feel embarrassed. Remember, that's a lower energy frequency scale. All I have to do to trick my system is be like, that's interesting. Literally. I know it sounds ridiculously easy, because it is. Now, it takes a bunch of times to make it
Practice,
work.
right?
But stopping yourself in the moment and saying, well, that's interesting. I wonder why that just happened, right? Or one of my favorite words that has helped a lot for me is, that's so curious. Tell me more about that. Because when I'm curious about something, even if it's not something I believe in, even if it's triggering something that I don't really want to have a conversation about, the second I say that's so interesting, I'm curious about that, tell me more. Do you feel what happens to your body? It leans, like you're just tricking your body,
It does something,
right? When you
physical.
say that's so curious, it doesn't imply I like it or I don't like it. Right? Because if you tell me this table's white and I go, no, it's not, I'm automatically out of the conversation. I shut it off. But if you say to me, this table's white, and I say, well, that's interesting. Can you tell me why you think that? All of a sudden, I'm now leaned in and I'm asking you, and we're continuing a conversation so we can create a meeting of the minds. This is incredibly powerful in work.
I feel like you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and this is what you do, right? You try to bring this kind of thinking into work environments.
How do we get our people to communicate? How do I run more effective meetings? How do I get people to show up? I mean, fill in the blank on it's almost always, can we trick their physiological response? Like understanding what is the physiological response. And then what is the power lever? That's what I like to call them. What is the power lever in order to be able to take them to a place they actually want to go? So do you want to hear a couple of like universal power levers?
I absolutely do.
Okay. So here's my favorite one. And this is really good. I'll just give you an example. This is really good. Do you ever do something that you think would be really interesting for other people to know, but you hold it back for some reason? Have you ever experienced that?
I have done. Yeah, I have experienced.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we were to have a little bit more time, we could have a conversation about why that's happening, but I'll cut to the chase. I can tell you exactly why it's happening. Because there is a belief that's very rampant in a lot of people that when I share things I have done, that other people will perceive me as bragging or better than, or fill in the blank.
They'll judge you.
They'll judge you. I don't want to be, it's very vulnerable to put yourself out there. That's a very powerful word. We hear that a lot. So there's a whole lot of reasons why people won't actually share something. But think about this. If you are a parent and you've had a child go through a situation that just simply by sharing that with more people, they would have the power of your story, right? But we can't, or we won't, or we think we shouldn't. You won't. So the universal power lever I build into every training program I create is permission. And it's really powerful, and it's so easy. Like, this is where people are like, it can't be this easy. I'm like, it is. It's actually this easy. So I will say to people, I actually give you permission to disagree with me.
Oh,
and they're like, really? Yes. I give you permission to disagree with me.
That takes down a lot of anxiety just by saying that, right?
It takes it all. Because what am I worried about? I'm worried that I'm going to look foolish in a meeting. Nobody wants that.
No.
Right? I'm worried that if I say something and it's wrong, can I get fired?
Yeah, or people
what are they going to judge me? They're going to talk about me.
Yeah,
like, we trip all this, all the BS stuff. That's worry. Right? That's shame, that's guilt, that's all, like, that's triggering everything. So you can just remove it for people. I've actually been in workshops. This is really powerful for workshops. Any of you that run meetings, workshops, anything like that, when you literally kind of set your rules and be like, listen, these are the only two things I need you to agree with me on here today, is I want you to tell me where what I'm talking about makes a lot of sense to you. Because I want to know who are my champions, who's already with me.
Yeah.
Right? You can read your room in a heartbeat. Who's already with me? More importantly, I want to know who's not in the pool, because I want to figure out how to get them there.
Yeah.
So I have to be willing to hear what they don't agree with.
Right.
So I have to be open and receptive to receive it. That's part of being a really good leader. And not bite your head off.
Yeah.
Right? Not embarrass you or shame you in some way when you do. So for me, the default is, that's so interesting. Can you tell me more? I'm so curious about that. Can you tell me more? It's not a threatening way to have a conversation, and actually really promotes conversation. So I just sprinkle that in like dust in the beginning of a meeting, and I'll say, and if we're talking about something and you have an alternative viewpoint, if you've experienced this in a different way, if there's something that you want to bring into the conversation, I give you permission to disagree. And we'll stop the conversation and we'll listen to you.
Yeah.
And like that, I can change manager behavior overnight.
And that's just language.
It's just language.
Wow.
It's just language, and it's not just language.
Remember, starts with that.
Because what am I stopping? I'm stopping the fear. What do you do in a meeting? What do most people do in a meeting? Why don't they listen?
They're not, you're not paying attention, or people are afraid, like you said, to speak up.
I'm so afraid about what I'm going to say next. What if I'm wrong? What if you make fun of me? What if they talk about me, because they're gonna, by the way, at the water cooler after the meeting is over. Right? Let's be honest. I mean, there's a reason we're fearful of these things. It happens all the time. Exactly. Yeah. So if I'm in a constant hyper state, right? Think about physiologically what's happening to me. Physiologically, in times of stress, we produce certain hormones that make it harder for us to think clearly, harder for us to stay calm. Like, go back to Patrick Mahomes, right? Why can he read where 7 men are running down the field, precision where to throw a ball, while all these things are happening? He's got skill, but ultimately he doesn't fold under the pressure.
Yeah.
And that's him either having a really great physiological response, right? Or just getting really savvy and being in tune about what's happening.
Yeah.
I think this is a great thing to share from our earlier conversation. And I'm curious, anyone watching either live or on the replay, like, chime in here. Do you ever get sensations in your body?
Yes.
But tell me what that's it. Tell me what's that like for you.
Yeah. So I definitely will get chills, and sometimes I will physically, you can see it physically, like my shoulders
you'll
will
get
move.
Right?
I'll get a chill, and it can be good or a bad chill. I've experienced both.
Yes. But you're very in tune to them and very receptive to them.
Yes.
When I was first learning about this, I'm like, first of all, I don't even know what you're talking about. This is not happening for me. So I don't know what we're talking about here. It was just, I needed to relax my shoulders a little bit. Like, if you want to know what are some good biohacking techniques, this is why breathing works. There's a thing called box breathing. I would absolutely just even releasing breath in any way, shape, or form this is why these are really popular. If you see like adult coloring became really popular,
Yes.
like there's science behind that, because what's actually happening is you're physically releasing energy. So doodling, writing, taking notes. Like I'm a crazy journal person. I have journals for everything. But I know what I'm doing now. Like I'm releasing, a lot of the nervous energy that's just naturally within me, so that I can stay clear enough that I can think things through, right? Because a lot of times what we do is we just pull ourselves out of the game.
Yeah, that's
right?
so true.
I mean, why are we not winning? Because I never took a swing.
You don't even hear,
My favorite line when I'm working with people is, success comes from the shots you actually take. And there's only a percentage of them. Even the best basketball players in the world, I mean, I'm not good with my stats, but like, what are the best basketball players in the world? What's anyone know? What's a good stat? Like, let's say maybe they hit 60% of their free throws, 70%, and they're like the best.
Yeah.
This is another hack, and schools pay attention, parents pay attention. This is the last one. We'll wrap it up. The pressure to get an A.
Gosh,
right?
I was going to bring
Nowhere
up school.
else in the world is success 100%.
I was going to bring up school because I think that the way our system is, at least when I was in like grade school, I'm talking more about, that's why I think so many of us are in that heightened anxiety. Yeah. Because school it conditioned you to be a certain way. It's like you get punished if you do this. You get rewarded if you do it like this. And it was just like you had
and that was it.
Options.
And if you didn't fall into that mix, you were in a lot of trouble. And again, remember what's measured, your intellectual success, not your creativity, not your spirituality, not your emotional, like none of those things factored into it. So I could go on and on about that, but ultimately, let's just keep a couple of stats in mind. The best sports players in the world are not 100% at anything.
No.
Marketing, if you get a 40% open rate, you're a freaking genius, right? So question yourself whenever you're striving for 100%. It's probably some leftover trauma from childhood.
Probably so.
Yes,
and I'm glad you brought that up. It's like the more you do something, the more likely you are going to succeed. If you don't succeed, you're not going to get it right the first maybe even 30 times.
Correct. Yes. How many times are you willing to try again? That's ultimately like, why do a lot of times very smart people will say, but I know more than this person and I didn't get the job. Because at some point it's not about the skill, it's about how savvy can you be in the moment. And that has nothing to do with your intellect and everything to do with managing the stress that comes out you as you rise higher in a company.
That's very true.
So I know we're about to wrap up. So I was going to say, so this is definitely the map of unconscious. Listen, this is not a light read, but it's worth time.
Yes.
Really worth time.
I'm
This
very
was a
curious.
game. This was a game changer for me.
Okay, great.
And I want to leave people with this gift, because I love to give gifts, but I want to leave people with this gift. How do I get started, Susan? Like, what can I do? I want you to challenge yourself every single day to blow up something you thought was true.
Okay.
Like just something that makes you question something you believed to your core. Because the second you can get comfortable there, you can get comfortable reinventing anything.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave one with you.
Yes.
This is a book worth getting. I just got this myself. It's called The Hidden Messages in Water.
Okay.
And here's the crazy part of this. And I use the word crazy on purpose because I want it to sound outlandish and crazy. This is a scientist who spoke really kindly to water and then froze it. He also spoke really unkindly to water and froze it. And do you want to know what happened?
What?
The water that froze, that was spoken to kindly, made the most beautiful crystal patterns ever. When under a microscope, like double blind, like scientists to the extreme. And the water that was spoken to unkindly was fractured.
Oh my God.
Fractured, broken, and there's pictures in here. I mean, even looking at the pictures, they did it with words, they did it with music. Like they recreated this over and over again. This is hundreds of experiences, years of work broken down into this. So if water is literally affected by how we talk, think about
humans.
Think about and I'm not even worried about as much what you hear outside. I'm worried more about what we say to ourselves inside.
Yeah.
Every time you do something and you call yourself stupid, or that was such an idiot move, or I'm such a jerk, or like just these flip comments all the time, you're literally just recreating these patterns that aren't true. So challenge yourself to find really cool people doing interesting things that blow your mind.
Yeah.
This is a book worth reading.
Okay. I love that. Susan, oh my gosh. Thank you for, we could talk for hours, I feel like.
I could.
But you dropped so many great gems into this conversation. I know that, I really enjoyed it. I know everyone else did. If anyone, I'm sure there's going to be people who want to maybe speak more with you or potentially work with you with what you do. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So the easiest way to find me is just at Susan Gatti on most social. LinkedIn is a really great platform for me. Susan Gatti on LinkedIn. Instagram, Susan Gatti, business advisor, I think, on LinkedIn. Message me. I have tons of free resources. We love to give out free things. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to leave you with something that this is brand new, hot off the presses. So everything in the energy of success is what I do for my clients and helping them to set goals and targets that they can achieve. And we've turned it into our first book. So this is literally like you talk about bringing something from the inside out. This is literally from the inside out. It follows all of our secret sauce strategy, and I wanted to share it with you.
Thank
you.
So
any goal in your life, I highly recommend that you use this book first.
The Success Formula.
Yeah.
So are you going to be publishing this?
Yes, it's available in certain formats now.
Where can people get it?
Well, I don't like to, I'm not, it's just not open on the open market just yet. I want to make sure people know what they're getting and how to use it so that they actually get the most benefit out of it. So I do teach an Energy of Success workshop, and we make it available after that workshop.
Oh, perfect.
So look for that on my social pages.
Awesome. That sounds great. Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh
I appreciate it.
This is a great episode. And to our audience members, thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of the GC360.
And do some biohacking.
Yes, please do. Thank you for tuning into this episode. This episode was sponsored by Alliance Services, and we will see you next time.
Season's greetings, everyone. Erica Becker here, your host at Garden City, New York Media. I am very excited to announce that I'll be providing acting classes for young people in Garden City in 2023. To stay updated and for more information, visit our website at longislandacting.com. Thanks so much and happy holidays.